Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins. Coming up in our second segment, we'll talk with Mike Shapiro of Larkspur about the proposal to bring a minor league baseball team to San Rafael's Albert Park next year. Larry, please introduce our first guest.
I will, Peter. We have Kate Sears, a Marin County resident living in Sausalito, who has just been appointed a new supervisor for District 1 in Southern Marin, my supervisor. She's going to be replacing Charles McGlashan and was just appointed by Governor Brown. Kate's a Deputy Attorney General.
Supervising Deputy Attorney General. That's way up there.
And managing the Consumer Law Division. She grew up here in Marin, graduated from Mount Tam High School, has a master's in Chinese studies from the University of Washington, a doctorate in political science from Michigan, and a law degree from Harvard. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah. She's worked for a bunch of major law firms downtown before she joined the Attorney General's office and worked under now Governor Jerry Brown. Locally, she served the board of Marin Conservation Corps and has chaired Sausalito Commissions on Parking and Public Safety. Welcome to Marin Voices and Views.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So, how does it feel to be a newly appointed supervisor for my district in Southern Marin?
It's exciting. I have a tremendous amount to learn. I'm really in listening and learning mode. A lot of people that I need to get to know, but I'm tremendously excited about it. I just feel like this is for me at this point in my life, is a perfect fit. It's something that I'm really looking forward to doing. Trying to get up to speed as fast as I can. We're hoping to have a seamless transition. It's, it's obviously unfortunate to be appointed in these circumstances. Charles McGlashan was so widely respected. I knew him myself, not well, but certainly respected him and his goals. And it's sad that this is the context that I am appointed in. But I'm tremendously excited to be here. I think it's going to be great. And, I hope to hit the ground running at least, maybe skipping. May take me a while to get into running mode, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Kate, I have to say I admire you for your call to service from the governor. I don't think it's easy at all to be a public servant, and certainly one that has to stand for election.
Right.
And I gotta say, thinking about someone who has to run for election, what are you, nuts? I mean, you got a good job, you got all kinds of interesting things to do, and how does it feel when you think about yourself and having to stand as a politician now?
Right. Well, that part is daunting, but and I obviously haven't made a decision. I need to get in and learn the job first. But this really resonates with my background. I was also on the Planning Commission in Sausalito. I did chair the two particular task forces. I've always been involved in community service in one way or another. I did a lot of pro bono work in my law firms. So I've always been very publicly oriented, but I was raised with a strong sense of public service. My mother, Mary Sears, was very intensely involved in politics in Sausalito. She's very widely known. She died a year ago, but people called her the tree lady because she drafted the tree ordinance and established the tree committee and had a very strong environmental ethic. And my father was a lawyer with a large firm, Pillsbury, Madison, and Sutro, for his entire career, but he also did a lot of environmental work pro bono and was instrumental in putting the southernmost piece of land into the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. So I was raised with a very strong sense of public service and environmentalism, and so I think this just came together and feels like the right place for me at the right time. So.
Charles McGlashan really made a mark here in Marin in a relatively short period of time.
Right.
He was on our show just a month before he passed away. And we know some of the issues that were really top of his agenda. And there's no requirement that in succeeding him, you have to be a carbon copy.
Right.
But let's start. What are the elements of his agenda that you embrace?
Right. Well, I certainly am excited about the Marin Energy Authority. I was a big supporter of that from the beginning, and I continue to be, and I really want to see that succeed. I'm totally in support of him and what he did on the recycling bill, and I'd like to see that going forward as well. On the SMART issue, as I think people are probably aware, I have some questions about it. I'm not 100% supporter. I have some questions and I want more information about it. I had a great conversation with Carol Misseldine about that issue, and she asked me if I'd keep an open mind, and I certainly will. So I think that's probably the one key area where I may not be 100% aligned at this moment. But as I said before, I'm in learning and listening mode, and I do want to keep an open mind on that issue.
Well, let's come back to SMART in a moment. You mentioned first the Marin Energy Authority, and it was almost put to death by PG&E before it was even alive.
Right.
And it has really defied the skeptics. It's repaid the startup money. It's online and expanding its services this year. The hysteria that was driven by PG&E seems to have subsided. What do you see as the next phase? And do you think any changes or enhancements need to be made to the MEA plan?
And unfortunately, that's a question I can't yet answer, and I hope you'll have me on your show in the future when I'm better educated. I certainly am aware of where it is now, and I think it's fantastic that the MEA has gotten itself in a fiscal position that is so strong currently. But I'm going to be active in that endeavor, and I need to get better educated. So I hope I can answer that question, more fully in the future.
Okay.
Once I'm better oriented.
Similarly, with the SMART issue, the SMART train issue, we've had people here on the show discussing it and the plans and the contraction of the plans.
Right.
But within the last couple of weeks or days, the Transportation Authority of Marin has been talking about whether or not there's been some controversy whether or not they should put some of their money into the SMART program. Have you thought about that, or what are your thoughts about the interaction between Marin Transit and SMART?
Right. Well, I am concerned about the contraction of the program because I'm worried that it won't be serving residents of Southern Marin as well as it might be. Although even obviously with the original terminus at Larkspur, that was going to leave areas of Southern Marin unserved. On the financial issue, I want to take a hard look at that. I know that there was voter money that was set aside for certain purposes, and I do want to take a hard look at the extent to which there's commingling and whether money is being used in a proper way. So again, these are issues that I hope to dive into very soon, but I need a lot more information about before I can take a specific position. But I am, I think it's very important that what the voters voted for is what happens. But I do want, and I also want to look at funding alternatives. So again, this is I need information. I'm keeping an open mind about things.
Is the Board of Supervisors a venue where one could look at how SMART's actually using its money and what's become of for example, the increase in the sales tax that's been implied since that time, and no one really quite knows where that money is or where it's going at this point?
Right. Well, certainly, TAM is. I think people should be asking the hard questions, whether it's to TAM or whether it's the Board of Supervisors in a proper venue. I think, everybody should be looking at those issues. I, as a supervisor, will certainly be looking at those issues.
And one thing I'd ask you to consider, I support the SMART concept, but as it's described, without a stop at Atherton Avenue for Fireman's Fund, we might have an orphan link here, the Park Hill Tunnel, that's been completed with stimulus funds, but now we don't have money to connect it to the San Rafael Transit Hub. And so if it's going to be a mishmash, I believe there should be a plan B. And when David Heath was the acting interim manager, he just stepped down from that post, but he was with us a few months ago. And that was the one thing he ruled out. And I feel that to be fiscally responsible with our tax dollars, even though I support the effort, if it's not going to work and if it's never going to pencil out financially, it seems that there should be a responsible effort to say, okay, we got to stop and cut our losses.
Right. Well, and I agree. You raise a lot of important issues. I'm certainly in favor of high-speed rail. But I am, as I said at the beginning, very concerned about the cutbacks in the program. There are certainly those who I've spoken to who think it's crucial to take sort of step one, and that will create some kind of momentum for step two. And that's certainly a hopeful thought. But like you, I'd like to see a plan. Well, exactly what will step two be? Is there a plan B for sort of increasing the possibility, the chances that we actually get to step two or plan B. So I, like you, I don't want to just build something. I don't want this to be like the nut tree train, right?
Which is fun.
Which is fun.
But it's never left Vacaville.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And there's also the skunk train, which my father years and years ago managed to save for the farmers that live along the train. So, we do have sort of limited distance trains, but I don't think that any of us who voted for SMART thought of it in that way. And certainly I'll be looking to see what is the larger plan going forward, and what helps maximize our chances of making it a successful program, and and what are the numbers behind that. And if we are at a position where we need to say maybe the doubts are so substantial, then I think we might, consider taking it back to the voters. I think there's different options for going forward, but
Right now, Marin, thankfully, continues to maintain a great bond rating, and we're in better financial shape than most of the 58 counties.
right.
But because of tax revenue losses, cutbacks from the state, a lot of things might have to be on the block. Child care, mental health, medical services to people who are disenfranchised. How do you prioritize cutbacks from county services as you look at it?
Well, nobody likes the idea of cutbacks in county services in any way, shape, or form. And I know that there's been a lot of county budget planning by the Board of Supervisors and the county administrator before I've gotten here, and I'm sort of arriving in the middle of that exercise. So again, for any kind of specifics, that's going to be something that I need more information about. It's my understanding there have been some cutbacks in county services already. I think the governor has certainly spoken about recalibrating monies so that there may be monies coming back to the county, and I don't know how that factors in with some of the planning that's been done by the board already to date and going forward. But I'd certainly want to take a broad look at what we might expect. Obviously, there's uncertainty at the state level right now as well, but I'm assuming the county is factoring in the various levels of uncertainty and possibility into plans that they make.
Now, you worked with Jerry Brown when he was Attorney General. He appointed you to this post.
Right.
How independent do you believe you'll be? And for example, the governor's plan to shift corrections, to move prisoners from San Quentin to the county jail, at least figuratively. Do you support that realignment of shifting from state to local government? And will there be money from the state to offset the cost of these shifted services?
Right. Well, I certainly will be independent of Jerry Brown. I take him as my role model, and we all know what an independent thinker he is. So I think I would be only following in his great footsteps if I were independent-minded, and I certainly think that that's how I am and how I would be. Yeah, I think in any consideration, whether it's the county jail or it's other forms of realignment, whether there's money there to accomplish the realignment is obviously crucial for all of us, whether we're residents of the county or we're on the Board of Supervisors. So that's something that I will be very concerned about. It's one thing to reallocate responsibilities. It's another thing to have responsibilities without money. This is something that used to happen to us in the Attorney General's office a lot. There would be legislation passed and the Attorney General would be assigned some responsibility but not funded to do it. So I'm keenly aware of the challenges that method of doing business can create.
Well, Kate Sears, thank you for joining us here today. It's a real
welcome.
pleasure to meet you, and we wish you the best in your new job on the Marin County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank
I
you.
wish you the best of luck. I think it's a really challenging job.
Thanks very much.
Michael Shapiro of Larkspur has an impressive background in baseball and sports media. He was vice president of the San Francisco Giants during the planning of AT&T Park. He was an executive at Turner Broadcasting and managed the Goodwill games back in 1998. He was a consultant to the Dodgers when Frank McCourt bought the team, and more recently was a senior executive to the Washington Nationals as they brought baseball back to the nation's capital. Presently, he runs Marin Sports Academy and is an adjunct professor of sports management at USF. And he's advising on a new proposal to bring minor league baseball to Albert Park, just a few blocks away from the Marin Community Media Center here in San Rafael. Mike Shapiro, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Now, Centerfield Partnership, which I understand Brian Clark is the lead investor, has a plan to start a new North American League team here in San Rafael as soon as next year. Tell us who Brian Clark is, where the idea came from, and give us a quick sketch of how this might work.
Sure. Brian is an entrepreneur, a young man who's grew up in the airline industry and has had this affliction that many of us suffer from, loves baseball, has for his entire life, and when he had some conversations with what was then called the Golden League, which was an independent league that was primarily on the West Coast a year or two ago, and began to think through an interesting proposition with them, and that would be to create a series of independent league teams that would play in the Golden League throughout the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Now, that concept somewhat runs counter to where independent leagues ordinarily start up, and that is they go to more remote areas where there is less competition, both in terms of people's entertainment dollar, leisure time spending, but also less access to professional baseball, as we have here in the Bay Area with two teams. Mm-hmm. But Brian's theory and his vision has been that it makes a great deal of sense to try to bring professional baseball into small communities, even if they are close to professional teams. And because of the very attractive demographics of the Bay Area, he thought that this investment on his part to capture the exclusive rights to Bay Area franchises in the Golden League made sense. So then when the Golden League ultimately merged with a couple of other independent leagues to form the North American Baseball League, his idea then became a lot bigger in that there were now teams throughout the Midwest and Texas who were also going to play in this league. So the league became bigger and stronger, and he had the rights to do it in the Bay Area. When he retained me to help him find locations to put these teams in, I remembered having played semi-pro ball at Albert Field. My kids, who both play at Redwood High School, play there today, and the thought occurred to me that I need to get him to come out and see this ballpark because it's charming, it's a bandbox, it's a throwback to the way community baseball used to be.
You know, as a businessman, I'm a businessman. I have a small business here in San Rafael as well, and the thought of having an entertaining baseball game and bringing people to 4th Street and walking around sounds great to me. I was looking at minor league baseball and preparing for our conversation and noticed there's about 12 or 13 teams throughout California. Focused in on the Visalia Rawhide and looked and saw that it seemed to me you could go to a baseball game, get in, a family of 3 or 4, have a hot dog, a beer, and a Coke for like $50-$60 as opposed to going downtown and paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars to see the Giants. How do you envision the cost and how is it going to interact with the community and the other businesses?
Well, I think you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly the business model right there. This form of entertainment is clearly for families on summer nights when there are fewer alternatives you could go to the movies, you can go to the bowling alley, you can go out to dinner, but this is another entertainment option for families, and it's low cost. As you say, the average price for a family of 4 is approximately between $50 and $60 at this level of play. And what it does is compete not with going to a Giants game or to an A's game, but it competes more with, as I say, going to the movies or going out to dinner. However, it also integrates with all the businesses that are in downtown, because typically what we have found is that a family will come into town or stay in town if it's a weeknight. They'll have dinner on 4th Street, and then they'll come see a game. And they're still going to buy a hot dog, and they're still going to, want to pay, for the ticket. But they're also going to be, frequenting the shops and the restaurants on 4th Street.
So is this freestanding minor league baseball, or will it be a farm team for one of the major league teams?
No, this is a different concept. This is called independent baseball, and as opposed to affiliated ball, where the teams are directly affiliated with a major league team, and the players come from the farm system of those major league teams. In this case, these are completely independent teams. The players come from three really kind of diverse sources. On the one hand, players will come out of spring training who have been cut, who didn't make it for whatever reason, with an affiliated team. Secondly, players will come from the ranks of those who've already played and made their name and want to just keep playing baseball. And I'll give you a great example. This year in the league, the Yuma Club is being managed by, and the starting pitcher for the Yuma Club is Jose Canseco. He named himself opening day pitcher as well as player manager.
Well, that's because he's always packing heat.
Well, that's right. He's ready to play. Last
think
year, Ricky Henderson was in the league last year.
Really?
So you'll see players who have made their name and they want to keep playing. And then the third source, and I think the most entertaining source of players coming, we're going to hold open tryouts and let the guys from the community who still think they have something left come out and try out and see if they can be pro players.
So talking about the community, making something and moving forward in Marin always has challenges. And I can't imagine that you're getting comments from across the spectrum of people in favor and not in favor. Some people, some attorneys saying that fans are going to go to the park and neighborhood and urinate in the street and smash windows and doing all kinds of horrific things, and I'm sure others are supportive. What are you doing to outreach to the community to talk about really what's going to go on there and how you're going to effectuate your program?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the key question to all of this, and that is, this business doesn't work unless it's a partnership with the community. And not just the community at large, but the neighbors as well. And Albert Park is a baseball park. It has operated as a baseball park since the early 1950s. It has lights, it has a public address system, and it regularly accommodates crowds of over 700, 800 people. So we believe that not only is the field itself appropriate, even though it's contiguous to a neighborhood, we still believe that the use of the field is appropriate for what we're asking the city to allow us to do, but that it is a benefit to the community, and that all of the benefits in bringing a professional team will inure to the benefit of everyone in the community. Now, it is true that some of the neighbors have had some concerns, and we are trying to reach out to them. We met, the first meeting we had before we went public was with the San Rafael Neighborhood Association. And we presented the proposal to them, and we got fairly favorable feedback from them. And yeah, we got some issues where they felt we could accommodate their concerns, and we are addressing those in the process.
And what's in it for the city of San Rafael? I saw a newspaper article that said you're only going to pay $80 or $90 an hour to rent the ballpark. Can we make a little better deal than that?
Well, it's a great deal for the community. First of all, we're going to be bringing in not only a lot of visitors who would not otherwise come to spend their money in San Rafael, who will now come because there's a baseball game. We're going to be keeping people in the city who would otherwise be going home to the suburbs on weeknights, but keeping them in the city, again, going for dinner before coming out to the game, spending more time in the city. We're going to be bringing these visiting teams in who are going to be staying in local hotels, eating in local restaurants, and we're going to be starting a new business in the community where we're going to be buying printing services and all other kinds of goods and services from the local community. So there's a broad economic impact to just having the team there. In addition, I think the benefit is one of the greatest benefits is we're going to be hiring local high school kids to help us run the ballpark during, the ushers, the ticket takers, the concessions workers. These are summer jobs for high school kids, and we think that's a huge benefit to the community. And lastly, I think the presence of professional baseball in any community brings a great number of advantages. Visits to senior centers, visits to the local schools, to hospitals, having professional players, whether they're big name players or not, they're still professional players and they're still sort of role models. Bringing these kids into this community is going to be a huge benefit. And the last element I'd say is while San Rafael is a wonderful, charming community, I've lived in this area for nearly 20 years, and we love living here and all the attributes of living here. It's one more attribute for the quality of life and for the brand value, the image of San Rafael. So we think it's a package of goods.
I was doing a little research, waiting for you to come on out, Michael, and what's the name of this team? Well, what's the logo? I mean, who are you guys?
Well, this is one of my favorite questions, and because I don't have the answer to that, and the reason I don't have the answer to that is intentional. We are going to let the community name the team. We're going to, assuming of course we get through the city council approval process and we get the green light to go ahead and do this, we're going to let the community name the team. And I think that will stir up a lot of interest, and it will further join the community with the team.
So Mike, what are the hurdles remaining? We have about 30 seconds. What do you see as the key steps here to make this happen?
Well, we've now received Parks and Recreation Commission's approval to go forward to the City Council with our concept. We are currently negotiating the use agreement with the city staff. Once we reach an agreement with city staff, that goes to the City Council for their approval.
Well, Mike, this is very exciting. You do have some problems to work out, and I hope you will work with the neighbors on parking and traffic issues. But I think this is a pretty exciting development. We certainly wish you the best with it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to coming and watching a little baseball.
I can't wait to see you throughout the first pitch.
Oh, yeah.